I watched Trump's Christmas address and realized something terrifying. Not about Trump himself, about what's happening to leadership in this country, about the disconnect between what people need to hear and what they're getting, about how far we've fallen from presidents who spoke to the nation's soul instead of lecturing them about statistics they don't believe. If you watched that speech and felt like something was deeply wrong, comment terrifying below. I'm recording this because I watched Trump's address on Christmas, the one where he asked for primetime television airtime, the kind of airtime presidents traditionally use for moments of national crisis or tragedy or unity, the kind Reagan used to mourn the Challenger astronauts, the kind Bush used to announce war, sacred airtime, precious airtime, airtime that means something. And Trump used it to yell at Americans, to tell them they're wrong about their own lives, to insist that everything is great when they know it's not, to lecture them with statistics while they're struggling with bills they can't pay, to demand gratitude when they're feeling fear. And I realized something watching it, something that terrified me more than any policy or political position. We've lost something essential in leadership, something that transcends party, something that matters more than whether you're Democrat or Republican. We've lost leaders who understand that their job isn't to convince people they're wrong about their own experiences. It's to listen, to understand, to address real struggles instead of denying they exist. Trump stood thereon and told struggling Americans that they're basking in a golden age, that prices are down when they know they're not, that wages are up when they feel squeezed, that everything is better when their lived experience screams otherwise. He used sacred presidential airtime to gaslight an entire nation about their own lives. And what terrifies me isn't that Trump did this. It's that this is where we are. This is what leadership looks like now. Loudness instead of empathy, statistics instead of understanding, insistence instead of listening, lecturing instead of connecting. Let me tell you what happened, what Trump actually said in that address. Because if you didn't watch it, if you turned it off halfway through like I almost did, you need to know what your president used precious airtime to tell you. He opened with immigration, hard anti-immigrant rhetoric on Christmas. When presidents traditionally speak about unity, about hope, about what binds us together, Trump opened by dividing, by attacking, by stoking fear. That was his Christmas message to the nation, fear of immigrants. Then he pivoted to bragging. Over the past 11 months, we have brought more positive change to Washington than any administration in American history. There has never been anything like it. That's what he said. On Christmas, to people struggling with groceries they can't afford and health insurance premiums that just skyrocketed. He bragged about how great he's doing. Then he listed statistics, rapid-fire statistics, about inflation supposedly cooling, about wages supposedly rising, about prices supposedly falling, statistics that don't match what people see when they check their bank accounts, statistics that don't reflect what they experience when they buy groceries or pay rent or try to afford healthcare, statistics that feel like lies when you're living the opposite reality. He declared that inflation has stopped, wages are up, prices are down. He said this while grocery prices remain stubbornly high, while health insurance premiums are spiking because his administration failed to extend enhanced Obamacare subsidies, while unemployment just hit a 4-year high, while wage growth is sluggish. He said prices are down when anyone who shops for groceries knows they're not. He ended by declaring America is back stronger than ever before, that we're poised for an economic boom the likes of which the world has never seen. More bragging, more insistence that everything is great, more demanding that people reject what they know to be true about their own lives. That was the speech. That was what he used presidential airtime for. On Christmas, fear, bragging, false statistics, and gaslighting. That's what leadership looks like now. But here's what terrifies me more than what he said. It's what he didn't say. What was missing from that address, what used to be standard in presidential speeches but has been abandoned. He didn't acknowledge struggle, didn't say, I know many of you are hurting, didn't recognize that for millions of Americans, this Christmas was hard. That they're stressed about money, scared about bills, worried about their children's futures, feeling squeezed in ways they've never felt before. He didn't acknowledge any of that. Instead, he told them they're wrong, that things are great, that they should be grateful. That's not leadership, that's denial. That's gaslighting. That's telling people their lived experience is invalid because statistics, often wrong or exaggerated statistics, say otherwise. He didn't show empathy, didn't connect with people's real lives, didn't speak to their actual struggles. Reagan, when he addressed the nation after the Challenger disaster, spoke to grief. He understood what people were feeling and he met them there. He didn't tell them the space program was doing great and they should be grateful. He mourned with them. He understood. Trump doesn't understand or doesn't care. Either way, he stood there on Christmas and lectured struggling Americans about how good they have it, about how their problems are solved, about how they should recognize his greatness. There was no empathy, no connection, no understanding, just statistics and insistence and demands for gratitude. He didn't offer solutions for real problems. He bragged about what he claims he's accomplished. But for the problems people actually face, grocery prices that are still too high, health insurance they can't afford, wages that don't keep up with costs, housing that's out of reach, he offered nothing. Just insistence that these problems don't exist, that prices are down when they're not, that everything's fixed when it's not. People don't need to be told their problems are solved. They need actual solutions. They need help with health insurance premiums that are spiking. They need help with grocery prices that remain stubbornly high. They need help with wages that don't cover basic costs. They need leadership that understands their struggles and works to address them, not leadership that denies the struggles exist. He didn't unite. Christmas is when presidents traditionally speak about what binds us together, about shared values, about being one nation despite our differences. Trump opened with divisive anti-immigrant rhetoric. He spent the speech attacking his predecessor. He blamed, he divided. He created an us versus them narrative. On Christmas, when unity used to be the message, when bringing people together used to be the point, that's what was missing. Acknowledgement, empathy, solutions, unity, all the things that used to define presidential addresses, all replaced with bragging, statistics, denial, and division. Here's what terrifies me about this. Here's what this speech reveals about where we are and what's happening to people who need leadership most. If you're an older American, if you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, you remember when presidents spoke differently, when Reagan mourned with the nation, when they acknowledged struggle, when they connected with people's real lives instead of lecturing them with statistics. You remember when leadership meant empathy, not ego. And you watched the speech and you felt the disconnect. You felt how far we've fallen. You felt that something essential has been lost. Not just about Trump, about what we expect from leaders, about what's acceptable, about how low the bar has fallen. You're struggling with fixed incomes that don't stretch as far as they used to, with healthcare costs that keep rising, with the sense that your children and grandchildren are facing harder times than you did, with the fear that the stability you knew is disappearing. And your president used Christmas airtime to tell you that you're wrong, that everything's great, that you should be grateful. That's not leadership. That's abandonment. That's a leader who's so focused on his own narrative, his own approval ratings, his own ego, that he can't see or doesn't care that people are hurting. If you're a family struggling with costs, groceries, housing, childcare, healthcare, you didn't need statistics on Christmas. You needed acknowledgement. You needed someone to say, I see you, I understand your struggle, and I'm working on real solutions. Instead, you got a lecture about how your perception is wrong, how prices are actually down, how you're actually better off, how you should recognize the golden age you're supposedly living in. You're not living in a golden age. You're living paycheck to paycheck. You're making choices between groceries and medicine, between heating and eating, between necessities, because you can't afford everything. and your president told you that's not real, that it's not happening, that you're wrong about your own life. That's gaslighting. That's denial. That's a fundamental failure of leadership, because the first job of a leader is to see people, to understand them, to acknowledge their reality. And Trump can't do that, or won't do that. Either way, he failed. If you're someone who voted for Trump because he promised to bring down costs and make life more affordable, you watched that speech and you might have felt betrayed, because he didn't acknowledge that he hasn't delivered on that promise yet. Didn't say, I know I promised this would be quick and it's taking longer than expected. Didn't offer realistic timeline or concrete solutions, just insisted it's already done, already fixed, already delivered. But you know it's not. You're still struggling, costs are still high, life is still hard financially, and being told you're wrong, being told your struggle isn't real, that doesn't help. That doesn't make you feel better. That makes you feel unheard, unseen, abandoned by the leader you trusted to fix this. Here's why this terrifies me. Not as a political issue, as a human issue, as a question of what we've lost and whether we can get it back. We've normalized leaders who don't listen. Trump isn't the first president to struggle with messaging around economic anxiety, but he might be the first to so completely refuse to acknowledge that the anxiety is real, to so aggressively insist that people are wrong about their own lives, to use presidential airtime to lecture and gaslight instead of to listen and connect. And we're accepting this. We're treating this as normal political behavior. We're debating whether his statistics are accurate instead of asking why a president would use Christmas airtime to list statistics at people who are hurting. We're missing the forest for the trees. The issue isn't whether inflation is at 2.7% or 3%. The issue is that people are struggling and their president won't acknowledge it. We've lost the expectation that leaders should empathize, should understand, should meet people where they are, instead of demanding people come to where the leader needs them to be. We've accepted that leadership now means insisting you're right instead of listening to people's reality. That it means lecturing instead of connecting. That it means ego instead of empathy. That's terrifying, because if we don't expect empathy from leaders, we won't get it. If we don't demand that they acknowledge our reality, they won't. If we accept being gaslit and lectured and told we're wrong about our own lives, that becomes normal. That becomes acceptable. That becomes what leadership is. We've created a reality where facts don't matter if they conflict with narrative. Trump listed statistics, many wrong or exaggerated, and insisted they represent reality more accurately than people's lived experience. That's dangerous. Not because statistics don't matter, but because when you prioritize narrative over reality, when you insist your version of truth matters more than people's actual experience, you lose the ability to address real problems. If a president can't acknowledge that people are struggling, he can't fix the struggle. If he can't hear what people are actually saying, he can't respond to what they actually need. If he's so committed to his narrative of success that he denies any problems exist, he has no incentive to solve those problems. The denial becomes the policy. The gaslighting becomes the strategy. And people continue to struggle while being told they're not. We've accepted division as normal. Trump opened his Christmas address with anti-immigrant rhetoric, used airtime meant for unity to divide, used a holiday message to create us versus them. And we're so used to this that we barely noticed. We just factored it into our analysis. Well, that's Trump. But it shouldn't be any president. It shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't be acceptable. Christmas addresses used to unite. Now they divide. And we've normalized that. If you're over 60, you remember different leadership. You remember presidents who spoke to the nation's struggles instead of denying them, who acknowledged reality instead of creating alternative reality, who unified instead of divided, who showed empathy instead of ego. You remember Reagan after Challenger, how he mourned with the nation, how he found sublime language for profound grief. They slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. That's leadership. That's meeting people where they are. That's understanding the moment and rising to it. Trump's Christmas address was the opposite of that. Instead of finding language that matched the moment, people struggling with costs during what should be a joyful holiday, he yelled statistics and demanded gratitude. No poetry, no empathy, no understanding, just ego and insistence and denial. You remember when presidents acknowledged struggle, when economic hardship was met with "I understand, not you're wrong," when leaders said, "I hear you, I see you, and we're going to work together to fix this," instead of "everything's already fixed and you're not appreciating it enough." You remember when Christmas addresses unified, when presidents spoke about shared values, about what makes us one nation, about hope and unity and coming together, not division, not blame, not anti-immigrant rhetoric, not attacks on predecessors, unity. That used to be the point. That used to be what Christmas addresses were for. And you're watching this now and you're seeing how far we've fallen, how much we've lost, how degraded leadership has become. And you're wondering, can we get it back? Can we expect better? Can we demand that leaders meet some minimum standard of empathy and unity and acknowledgement of reality? Or is this just how it is now? Is this the new normal? Leaders who gaslight and divide and lecture and deny, is that what we're accepting? Is that what leadership means now? Let me tell you what people actually needed to hear on Christmas. What would have been appropriate use of presidential airtime? What real leadership would have looked like? Acknowledgement. I know many of you are struggling this Christmas. I know grocery prices are still too high. I know health insurance premiums just went up for many of you. I know wages aren't keeping pace with costs. I know you're worried. I see you. I hear you. Your struggle is real and valid. That's what people needed. Not statistics, not denial, not being told they're wrong, just acknowledgement, just being seen, just having a leader recognize that their experience is real. Empathy. I understand this is hard. I understand you're making difficult choices. I understand Christmas might not feel joyful when you're stressed about money. I understand you're doing your best and it doesn't feel like enough. I understand. That's what empathy sounds like. That's what connection sounds like. That's what leadership sounds like. Not everything's great and you should be grateful, but I understand your struggle and I'm with you. Realistic assessment. We've made some progress, but we're not where we need to be yet. Prices are still too high. Costs are still a burden. We have more work to do. And I'm committed to doing that work, to finding solutions that actually help, to making life more affordable for families who are struggling. That's honest. That's realistic. That's what people need to hear. Not insistence that everything's already fixed, not denial of ongoing problems, but honest assessment of where we are and commitment to making it better. Concrete help. Here's what we're doing to bring down health insurance costs. Here's what we're doing to make groceries more affordable. Here's what we're doing to help with wages. Here are actual solutions to actual problems you're facing. That's what people need. Not bragging about what you claim you've already done, not statistics that don't match their experience, but actual solutions to actual problems. Concrete help, real action. Share this if you watched that speech and felt like something was deeply wrong. Comment terrifying if you're as concerned as I am about what we've lost. Subscribe for honest conversations about what leadership should look like and what we're accepting instead.